Val, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, and we are today going to be we're going to be calling this the JD webcast for today, as we're still working on final branding for the channel. So,
Okay.
I'm Jake D. Thank you for joining. We're going to be talking today about the Umbrella Academy Season 2. Joining me again is my good friend Val Gear to have a little chat. We've got a few ideas in mind for what we want to talk about today. So first, a little bit burning questions that we didn't quite get to in last week's stream. And we also want to chat a little bit about where the powers of the members of the Umbrella Academy come from, whether that be through lore from other areas, games, mythological traditions, what have you. Have a little fun with that. It's not something that I've seen talked about much, and Val brought it up and thought might be a lot of fun.
Definitely.
All right. So something I was thinking about that you and I were talking about previously, Val, was Hargreaves' speech right at the beginning of the last episode of season 2. And, reset it for you. It's Ben's funeral, and he's being really cold to the group. And he's talking about how as long as there's evil in the world, there need to be people, of strength and good, to rise up and defeat it until such time as it doesn't exist anymore. And then he goes to tell the entire group that there are no such people here. So, and it was just a really, really tough speech. But again, one of my favorite things about Hargreaves in the season was he took a much more active role in what was happening, and you could see more of his planning and more about him. So, give me your thoughts on that piece.
Well, I mean, the things that Hargreaves says during the funeral are very cold and they're very cruel, especially to a group of kids, and almost unwarranted, except for we don't have a whole lot of context outside of the fact that this is Ben's funeral and Ben has died. But we don't have any of the backstory of what were the specific circumstances that led to the demise of Ben. So it's really hard to say how unwarranted it was, but even still, the approach was very cold and it was very cruel,
to say the least. So, yeah, and it was. I mean, for me, it was a powerful scene, and I really liked it because I think we get to see a little bit more of just what he was planning the whole time with creating the academy and bringing the kids together to try to train them. And it's because everything he does that we've seen when the kids were young was always about bringing them into the people that he wants them to be, and he thinks that they need to be, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. So what are your thoughts about that ending for season 2, Val?
You talking about with the Sparrow Academy?
Yes, sir.
And the meeting everybody in the Sparrow Academy and This is not your home. Specific thoughts. Really, the main thing that's been going through my head is what is the floating green cube? Because I
Yes.
really want to know. The curiosity is just nagging at me. Some of the other things to note, Ben is there, which is interesting. Um, None of the silhouettes up on the balcony seem to resemble the outline or profile of any of the Umbrella Academy. And it kind of, this is something you and I've talked about before. It makes me wonder if when Reggie was setting all this up, um, in the alternate timeline, if he was thinking the Umbrella Academy may be the source of all of these apocalyptic situations, maybe I need to put together a group of heroes that are going to fight against the Umbrella Academy. And in
Yeah.
doing that, made sure that he didn't pick anybody that he knew was a guaranteed in the Umbrella Academy, because he met everybody at the dinner night except for Ben.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I'm right there with you on that. It sets up a very, I mean, we don't know if Hargreaves sees them as friend or foe. And I'm with you. It's very plausible that he could really be seeing them as foe. To your point, you know, the apocalypse and doomsday were both the fault of the Umbrella Academy, at least indirectly, right?
Right.
And we know that Hargreaves is aware of and planning for and trying to avoid the apocalypse. So, I mean, it seems pretty sensible that if he thinks he's identified the cause, then he's going to take steps to avoid it. You know,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it harkens back to season one in episode 10 of season one, you know, when he's escaping what is presumably some sort of apocalypse on his home planet, which we now, of course, know he is legit an alien in a very, you know, sort of Men in Black type scene. He takes off his mask and, you know, we see something very, very alien underneath it. And of course, he kills the Majestic 12, which, you know, that was a lot of fun.
Well,
So,
at least 11 of them.
yeah. Well, presumably he was number 12, right?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, all of that being set up, it really kind of makes you question what will happen at the beginning of season three, you know, because it could go any number of ways. It could be, you know, there's going to be a big fight between Sparrow Academy and Umbrella Academy, um, or it
God,
could
I would
be
love
there.
that.
That would be interesting, but in order to really appreciate that sort of fight, we're going to have to get more backstory on the Sparrow Academy and get to know all of the members. Otherwise, I mean, if they just drop it in at the beginning of season three, if they just drop us right into the middle of a fight between, you know, 13 of these superpowered beings, um, we're going to immediately back the Umbrella Academy because those are our heroes. Those are the ones we've been following for 2 seasons. And we're not really going to have any. What's the word I'm looking for? We're
Investment?
yeah, that's a good word. We're not going to have any investment at all in seeing the Sparrow Academy succeed in any kind of way.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. To your point, we have no idea who they are. I mean, Ben's there, but that's not our Ben, right?
Right.
It's a Ben that was raised completely differently under completely different circumstances. He doesn't know any of our heroes that we've grown to know and love over 2 seasons. So it's, I mean, presumably he's got the same powers, but, you know, other than that, it's not the guy we know.
Now, here's something I had thought about. So, the Umbrella Academy Ben is gone.
Yes.
Done and gone, never coming back. And we're obviously never going to get the answer to this, but if Ben had never actually completely gone and he was still haunting Klaus, so to speak, would he still be in the Sparrow Academy? And what would his um, reaction be to seeing himself in the Sparrow Academy if he was there?
You know, interesting question. And I would say, based on what appear to be the rules of time travel in this universe, that had Ben not sacrificed himself to stop Vanya in season 2, then he presumably would have been able to time travel with the group, unless for some reason the mechanics of the briefcase work differently than Five's portal. And so if he comes forward with them and was still with the group, you know, you've got another sort of paradox going on, right? I mean, we've already had some of the issues with the causation in the previous 2 seasons, but then you've got 2 alternate versions of Ben, because we know this is an alternative future. It's not the 2019 that they came from, obviously. I mean, that's abundantly clear. They changed too much when they were in the past, and it's now a radically different future.
Yeah.
And it's in a way, it's too bad that Ben's gone, because if they are to set up a conflict between the 2 groups, then one of the things that he could be a bridge to help resolve it, and then move on to some presumably greater evil that they're going to face in season 3.
You mean a bridge, like being able to connect to Sparrow Ben?
Exactly, right. So at some point, perhaps Klaus is able to manifest him, and he can, it's, when he's manifested, he should be able to speak, or to bare minimum, the fact that he's standing there ought to bring things to a stop, I would think.
Well, maybe, but there is also the thought process that, at least the theory that who we are today is the sum of our past experiences and memories.
Indeed.
Sparrow Academy Ben would be a completely different person than Umbrella Academy Ben, potentially, because of the different dynamics and the different members of the team.
Oh, absolutely. But it would still be the same person, the same DNA. So I guess where I'm going with is the shock value of seeing the alternate Ben with the Umbrella Academy, might be a way that they could have bridged the gap. Although, I mean it's not going to happen, obviously, because we've lost the old Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, what might be a good way to set up season 3, and this is just me having fun, right? is if we get ready to have a fight between the 2 teams, and then maybe you build that up in the first episode, and perhaps close that episode with the 2 groups facing off, and then you could trail into the next 2 to 3 episodes setting up the Sparrow Academy. To your point, there's no investment in these kids.
Right. Another option would be for the entire series, or not the series, excuse me, the entire season, have 2 running timelines. The first timeline really only takes place over, a few hours. And the second timeline takes place over possibly years. And the second timeline will be following the Sparrow Academy, a lot like we did with the Umbrella Academy in season 1. So we're establishing all the characters, who the major players are, what their backstories are, their nuances, their personality types, everything like that. And then
what the hell that cube is.
And what the hell that cube is. And then the shorter timeline is going to be initial first reactions on the 2 teams meeting each other, any possible conflict that occurs between the 2 teams, if Reggie has been, setting up the Sparrow Academy to take down the Umbrella Academy, and then obviously whatever the resolution is of that, which, I mean, considering the power of the 2 groups, could be a cataclysmic event all on its own.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my biggest complaints about season 2 was we didn't see the exhibition of the powers enough.
That's true.
And if we don't get, I mean, I desperately want a fight between Umbrella and Sparrow just for that reason.
Or at least somebody else that can actually put up more of a fight than your average human.
Yes, please, please. That's the only. That was the biggest missing thing in season 2 to me, and the biggest thing that they need to pay off and deliver on in the upcoming seasons. From where I'm sitting, right?
Yeah. Another interesting thing is Lila ever going to come back?
Oh God, I hope so. I hope so.
For Diego's sake, I hope so.
Well, not just for Diego's sake, but like, I mean, you could make a case that she really was one of the leads for season 2, and she was great.
Oh yeah.
Her powers are wonderful. One of the things that sort of speaks to the fact that they would kind of have to bring her back, from my point of view, is without anyone else around her, she probably doesn't have any punch.
That's a pretty good assumption.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly seemed to be some need for proximity for her to use the powers. They didn't seem to be permanent. I mean, unless maybe she can hold on to one forever, although we don't necessarily know one way or the other on that.
Yeah, that was one of the things, and that's one of the things that the writers and directors of the TV show have really put a lot of work into. Is they never sit down and just clearly write out, okay, these are the powers, right? It's always we're gonna give them just a small taste of what the power kind of leads into, and we might show a clip later on of fully unloading. But you never really know, and you kind of have to piece it together yourself as you watch through the whole series.
Yes, and that brings us to one of the other topics that we mentioned at when we kicked off the broadcast. And this is, to an extent, this is why I thought Val's idea was so good to have on this discussion, and that is because of some of that ambiguity around necessarily just what these people's powers are. It could be a really interesting discussion to talk about analogs in other types of lore, whether that be video games, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons, whether it be mythology, what have you, that point to sort of similar archetypes. And one of the things about that is it could help give us some insight into where it's going. I don't know, is that you following me there, Val?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's not much that's going to be new well, how do I word this? It's incredibly difficult to come up with an entirely new and unique and original concept with where we are today.
Oh,
because
sure. In this genre?
Yeah. So I mean, so a lot of these superpowers that you're seeing, we have seen in video games. We've seen them in movies. We've seen them, in ancient mythology. We've seen them all over the place. And so one of the things I like to try to do is just kind of draw comparisons and see what relates to what, and what was different and what was the same, and see if you have this new character that you think is unique that ends up being a carbon copy of something somebody else came out with, years and years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this was a lot of fun. Val thought of this idea a couple days ago. We've both been kind of ruminating and trying to come up with our answers for how this applies to each member of the Academy. And we're gonna hit each other live with this here because we kept it to ourselves intentionally to hopefully have a little bit more fun discussion on it. So let's start with Luther. Where would you say he is most drawn from your point of view?
So Luther is one of the toughest ones in the category, in my opinion. Because here you have this person that is very strong, extremely strong. The disfigurement, has more to do with the past and not the character itself. I mean, it is still part of the character, but the disfigurement does not necessarily relate to the superpower, right?
I tend to agree with you there. Yeah. I mean, the one thing it may have done was enhance it, if it did anything.
Right. But the power was still there. He was still, freakishly strong. And so just being very strong and very good at fighting, that's way too broad of a spectrum, And to go into any deeper into Luther, you're going to and this is just where my mind went when I ended up, creating this idea. You'd have to go into the personality of Luther. And so looking at the personality of Luther, Luther is, Luther's been a protector. Luther has mostly a protector. He does go on the offense sometimes. But he's very big into internalizing his own pain and issues, like we saw in the fight scene.
Yes.
Hurt me, right?
I want to feel all the pain.
Want to feel all the pain, and that speaks almost to a martyrdom.
Sure.
Not that what he was doing there was being a martyr, because yes, that was all of his own pain that he was trying to put a physical form on rather than an emotional one. But he is the person that's ready to take all the damage. Right? He's the person.
Yeah. He definitely fits into the prototypical, if you're talking in the video game world, he's some type of tank, right? For people, I imagine most people who listen to this will be familiar with what we're talking about there. So he certainly sort of falls into that general tank category. I agree.
Yes. And having set that premise, I thought it was very, very close. Berserker fits his fight style. So some sort of barbarian berserker fits his fight style a lot more. But I think with his personality, he'd be a lot closer to something like a paladin.
Sure. So if you're looking at it from a Dungeons and Dragons, World of Warcraft type perspective, that sort of tradition of the paladin, I mean, definitely, I get where you're coming from.
Even there, you'd have to separate those, because a traditional D&D paladin is going to be charisma based, and that is not Luther's greatest strength. His greatest strength is his strength. He does have charisma, but it's not a significant amount. So I like what you said about the WoW paladin. Yeah, WoW protection paladin would kind of fit.
And I understand completely why you came up with that answer. And I'm going to go with a little bit different approach to describing Luther. And to me, while I agree he's got the personality of that type, when I watch what he does, and I get a very, very Hulk vibe off this guy. Incredible Hulk from Marvel. He feels a lot like that to me. And one of the things that leans me in that direction versus more of a fantasy type hero, like where you're going, is because it seems like as he gets more amped up, similar to what you see in the Hulk, he seems to become tougher and perhaps even stronger. And you know what I point to back that up is you look at the battle at the beginning of season 2, where he takes an RPG off of his back and the dude doesn't even move, right?
Yeah,
Yet,
except to like stretch and roar a little bit, but yeah.
yeah, right. I mean, you know, his body doesn't even like push forward a little bit. He just takes the RPG on his back and you know,
Yeah.
and you know, which is tougher than you see him being in, you know, the very immediate past. As you're going through season 2, you know, it's less than 10 days before that, and he's clearly not as resilient in different situations. You know, he gets, you know, when he's in the fighting ring, for instance, he actually takes a lot of, I mean, relatively superficial, I suppose, but he takes some blunt damage when he's fighting in the ring. You see him spitting blood like crazy. You know, I mean, he's not particularly getting hurt, but he's certainly taking a little bit of damage. And, you know, you look at.
He was bruised after that fight.
Right. Right. And then, you know, you look forward to the ultimate ending to the season that we got where, you know, the handler comes in and guns him down. And, you know, so I'm looking at that, and it seems like depending on the situation, his resiliency and his strength seem to change. And so that's why, to me, I draw a lot of parallels to the Hulk.
Okay. I can see that. I see what you're saying. I
mean, not to the level of the Hulk. Don't get me wrong; he's obviously not that strong. But
right.
Right.
The Hulk always struck me as the berserker, the barbarian type of person.
Sure.
And you know, loss of control is kind of implied with that. And we've never seen Luther lose control. And maybe that just goes back to, you know, we haven't really seen him fight with his full force yet. But
which is such a shame.
Yeah. But it kind of raises the question of, can he lose control, and you know, what does that look like, and does it look like destruction on the scale that you would expect from somebody like the Hulk?
I hope so. I really do. I want to see it so bad.
Something tells me we will get the opportunity.
Oh God, I hope so. Man.
Eventually.
All right. Let's step forward to number 2, Diego.
Diego. All right. You want to go first? You want me to go first? You go first. I took Luther.
All right. I'll take Diego first. I will take Diego first. So Diego, I mean, if you're talking about a fantasy type setting, I mean, Diego's very much the rogue to me, right? And you know, whether you're talking about his preferred weapons, his preferred fighting style, the agility, the fact that he's you know, you see him doing infiltration, you know, all this sort of traditional skill set of that sort of archetype of the rogue, right? And the one thing I will say about Diego is I can't think of a real true parallel in, you know, say the comic book world. The closest you've got is like a Bullseye or a Deadshot, but they're not even close, because he can do a lot more than control something that he's sending downrange. But it's also not telekinesis at all. Or at least it doesn't seem to be.
No, it seems like it's a vector and velocity manipulation.
Right.
So if you were to try to put a name on that power, it'd be kinetic kinesis.
Maybe.
Which almost sounds redundant, but it kind of makes sense.
That's as good a name as I can think of.
We need to remember that kinetic kinesis.
Well, fortunately, this is being recorded.
There we go.
TM Val Gear.
There we go. I'm gonna have to Google it. Let me see if that's a thing.
Yeah, but I mean, granted, I'm not. I read a lot of Marvel when I was a kid. I read a lot of DC. I didn't branch out much beyond that, but I can't think of sort of that
It's
comic
a book series.
It's a book series.
There's a book series called Kinetic Kinesis. Or no, hang on. There's a book called The Kinetic, and it's Kinesis book number 2.
Okay.
So,
hey, you need to just trademark that right now.
yeah, I know, right? Time's running out.
But I mean, I don't know of any. I can't think of whether we're talking mythology. Like in mythology, you can kind of look at Hercules for Luther, a little bit of a parallel there. I can't think of anything in mythology for Diego. I can't think of anything in comic books. He is one, contrary to what we both agreed at the beginning, that I don't see a good parallel. He does seem to be somewhat unique.
He is pretty unique. I'm going to agree with you that Rogue is probably the closest parallel you can draw. And not even so much with his power, but with his skills.
Yes.
He's definitely an infiltrator. He's sneaky as hell. Hand-to-hand fighting, off the charts.
A Cuban exile known only as Diego.
And you don't see him showcase his abilities all that often.
No.
And to, that great an extent. Although
we did get two, I mean, even though you say that, in a way, he's almost the one that we saw the best in this season. Right? Because we did get those two scenes.
Yes, we did get the two scenes. The first one being the big fight scene at the beginning with all the bullets. Well, okay. Actually, I'm thinking of 3 scenes. So there's
and the spin move and the bullets all turn around and shoot the guys that were trying to shoot him.
Right. So yeah, there's that one. There's the introduction to the fight scene with Reggie, where he throws the knife and Reggie dodges it as the knife curves and hits a pillar that's a very clear 90 degrees to the right. And then
who did that?
That's an excellent question, but we haven't seen Reginald actually show any powers.
We haven't, but why would Diego have done that?
I don't
know.
But why would Reggie have done it? Because from the way it was shot, it looked like it didn't curve until after it had already passed Reggie.
Why would Reggie have done it? To take it out of play so it didn't come back at him.
That's valid. That's a possibility. But still, yeah, there's no telling.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that Reggie would have superpowers. Having him have the technology to give human kids superpowers, maybe. Well, definitely,
Well,
but
clearly, right? Yeah, I mean that's a foregone conclusion. We know he did that. So, but
and then
it
and
is
then
a
the third
question
scene
to
of
me. Who did that? Was that Reggie or was it Diego? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yes.
And then the third scene, of course, being Diego at the farmhouse with all of the commission members, agents, shooting at him and Five, and he's got to stop all the bullets and then redirects, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of bullets into the gas can to blow it up.
Yes, and that was I loved that scene. You know, because you and I were talking about this before when we first saw the episode 1 of this season. We didn't catch that he had turned the bullets the way that he did, and you see that in episode 10. And then I mean, I've rewatched the season like 3 times now, maybe more than that in all the videos I've been cutting. You go back and then you notice that original scene.
Right.
But that was I think most people, that was the first time they really noticed Diego using his power to the greatest extent we've encountered so far. I don't want to go so far as to say to the greatest extent possible, because who knows what's coming, right?
Right. So one of the things I wanted to bring up before we moved off of Diego and him being, you know, similar to a rogue from like Dungeons and Dragons, is one of the things to note about Dungeons and Dragons rogues is there is a way to build them so that they do have a limited set of spells they can cast.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if telekinesis or something, you know, similar to telekinesis would be one of those. I'd have to look it up, but that's always a possibility.
There you go. He's a fun character, and him and Lila just top notch this season.
Definitely.
Can't say enough good about the both of them. All right, moving on to number 3, brother.
Number 3. Now, I always get them confused. Is number 3 Ben or Klaus?
It was Klaus.
Klaus. Okay. So number 3, Klaus. And here's where it gets kind of difficult. I mean, I don't know. Luther's, I think, is still the toughest one to nail down, but it's a question of whether you're going to go with the source material or the TV show. And since we're mostly talking about the TV show, that's what I'm going to stick with.
Yeah.
The source material just muddles things up with this topic. So Klaus seems like your stereotypical necromancer almost, except for without calling forth ghouls and skeletons, seems more prone to calling forth spectral beings, geists, ghosts, that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. It a necromancer, but he can't bring skeletons to life, right? Which is a traditional necromancer power, particularly in that sort of D&D tradition. But then again, maybe he can. We haven't seen it yet, I grant you that.
And it's not like we've seen him come into contact with that many actual dead bodies.
So that could be
yeah.
That could be a nice evolution of his power going forward.
That's I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see it as an evolution, but I think it would be taking the Umbrella Academy as a whole and kind of a little bit of a wrong direction based on what they've been doing so far.
And it would be a little macabre for this show.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean,
we have just enough of the darkness that we need watching Five go on a killing spree. The little shit looks like he's enjoying it, man. He's a psychopath.
that little murderous bastard. And he is my favorite.
For some reason, that's not surprising.
that kid, Aiden Gallagher, man. He gonna be around for a long time if he wants to be. That kid is good.
Maybe with as impactful of a role he is currently in, and how well he's doing with it, he might run into the same issue that what's the actor's name? The Harry Potter kid.
Daniel Radcliffe?
That one. Thank you. I don't know why I spaced on the name. He might have trouble getting a serious role, like, kind of the same trouble that Daniel Radcliffe ran into.
Yeah, although Radcliffe seems to be working past that. He's he got a lot of praise for Guns Akimbo.
I didn't see that one. I didn't hear much about it.
He's crazy and violent in it.
Okay. The ones that I'm thinking about that I remember are Swiss Army Man.
Mm-hmm.
Which, not even going there. Wasn't there one? I'm trying to remember the name of it, or at least the premise of it. Something about a horse or something.
Oh gosh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember it.
It was a very, very. It was an art piece, is what it was. Based on a screenplay, if I remember right. There was Tusk,
mm-hmm.
right? There was Tusk. And I mean, none of these movies did very well.
I think the best one, at least in terms of money, was Guns Akimbo. But he's stretching around. I hope he can keep going somewhere.
His career is by no means over.
Oh no, he's still like 25.
I think he's a little older than that, but I'm not sure. But it's one of those things where it's going to be very surprising to see him in one of the major blockbusters.
Yeah. I mean, he'll need some time off. Then he can come back into something.
Yeah.
So moving on to number 4. Oh, and Mary says Radcliffe was great in Miracle Workers. I got to admit, I didn't see that one.
I didn't see that one either.
Was that more of a ladies type movie, Mary? So, but Allison, all right. So why don't you pop up first on number 4, Allison, Val?
So Allison, Allison is your charisma bard. And only bard because bards are extremely manipulative and persuasive. They use their charisma for that. There's an ongoing joke in the D&D community about how the bard is always trying to have intercourse with a dragon. Or anything else that it goes up against a fight. Because the bard can usually talk the enemy into not fighting. And so there you have Allison, who simply has to say, I heard a rumor, and that's the end of the fight most of the time. So, yeah, I thought that one was pretty clear cut.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely fits, certainly in that fantasy genre as a bard. No argument there. It's, she uses the silver tongue to get her what she needs, right? But then and you see of it a little bit more in the, sort of reality warping sense in that initial battle scene where she says, I heard a rumor, I blew your minds. Yeah. And sure enough, their minds blow.
Yeah, definitely. But also bards have spells that don't relate to manipulating people. They have
Yes.
cantrips they can cast.
Yeah.
I stand by bard.
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's you know, I don't think there's not a super great analogous type person in comic books. I mean, there for me, like thinking to that genre, because I mean, you've got like, there's a little bit of Scarlet Witch in there. Maybe there's a little bit of a Jean Grey, something of a blend of the two, but not as powerful as either one of them, at least from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you follow where my head's at on that one?
With which one now?
Kind of a blend of Scarlet Witch and Jean Grey.
Are we still talking about Allison, or did I miss something?
Yeah. No, we're still on Allison, right? So
okay.
so when she can rumor somebody to do whatever she's telling them to do, I mean, that strikes me as like the closest to, sort of a suggestive telepathy ability, right? I mean, you even see their eyes go white, and she's clearly affected them mentally,
right?
But then there's also the element where she can affect reality. Now, granted, there's differences between the comic source material here versus the what we've seen in the TV show, and
right.
But she's definitely had some sort of reality warping capability in the TV show as well, and so that's a little bit of Scarlet Witch to me in there.
Yes,
but not as
definitely
powerful.
See the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, but not as powerful as either one of those two. You know what I mean?
Right. I'd have a hard time seeing the Jean Grey reference, but I do see what you're saying with the Scarlet Witch, who, definitely has the ability to manipulate people, as well as some ability to alter the fabric of reality, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. What do you think we're going to see from her in season? Do you think we're going to see her more like the rumor from the comic books, or do you think what we've already seen is going to be kind of the limit of what we get out of her?
We might get an opportunity to see the more of the rumor from the comic books, and that would be really, really cool to see. But if we think about what's happened so far, it just about every time she's tried to rumor, or at least towards the end of the season, in season 1 and season 2, she got smacked down pretty hard. Yeah. In season 1, she got her throat slit by Vanya. And in season 2, it backfired when Lila turned around and,
told her she stopped breathing. Yeah.
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's fair. I mean, she hasn't had a lot of opportunity to stretch her wings.
Right.
So.
Right. And that would, that could almost cause her to become timid in using her powers, getting smacked down that hard, that often, I mean, granted, they did go on that little shopping spree, and it was, that was fun and everything. And then she kind of fell a little bit too far into it and walked in and had the dude burn his hand on the coffee. So that didn't, if that affected her anyway, it was an emotional thing of, what does this monster I've become, where I'm telling this person to do this.
Yeah. I mean, that could present an interesting conflict for season 3 and a character arc for Allison, depending on what they're doing with the season, obviously. But, her coming to terms with, I mean, as you said, every time she's tried to use it in a battle that we've seen, she ends up getting in trouble, right, to say the least. And she's also got to deal with the fact that, as we saw from the shopping scene that you referenced, that when she does use it, it's a bit of an addiction, and she crosses a line, right? So that could present a good internal conflict for her in season 3, and if they could give her a bit of a hero's journey arc related to that might be a good approach to her for the next season.
Oh, definitely.
So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And, it's 3 people watching, so they're probably not listening to us. But hey, if you are. All right, man. We're going to skip number 5.
What?
We're going to save him for the end. You can't.
Okay.
We're going to save him for the end.
No, I got a bonus for the end.
Oh, we got a bonus for it. Okay, we'll go into number 5.
For the end.
We will go into number 5. So, I mean, looking at it from a fantasy genre approach, the best that I've got for number 5 is kind of a blue mage in the Final Fantasy tradition.
Okay, we have to get a little clarity here. Because Final Fantasy nowadays, a blue mage, it has nothing at all to do with time.
Well, I'm talking back in the day when I was a little kid playing video games.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, you think back, Final Fantasy Tactics, when you had numbers in the single digits, things like that. And,
yeah.
And similar games of the same general genre at the time, think late 80s to mid 90s kind of time frame. And they were specifically the time mages, and they their big powers were slow and stop and haste and other things like that, and certainly had the ability to blink. Now I grant that there wasn't really much of a tradition of time travel there, but it's only a small leap from that.
So I did a little looking into what I could find in the D&D universe that was a time mage, and they actually have a class called Time Mage, which is all about the manipulation of time. A lot of things such as I think I saw a distortion in there and a couple other things. I would imagine that a short range teleport or blink would be available. And on the same note, crossing that with some sort of red mage who would focus on some martial prowess and physical attacks.
Yes, because 5. I'll tell you that is one guy that I would not want to cross.
Yeah, no, he's a murder machine. So yeah, I would have to settle on red mage because most of his killing is based on physical attacks.
Yeah, well, he's not killing anybody with his time powers. That's for sure.
Right. So he's using the magical abilities more as a tool than an actual weapon. His weapon is all in his, sword or whatever. So yeah, I would say
he's
red
using.
mage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he uses anything he can get his hands on. I mean, we saw him use little pens like this to kill people at some point during the show. That guy is. Well, I mean, he calls himself possibly the most deadly assassin in the time continuum, and I ain't gonna argue with him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think back to that dancing with myself scene from episode 9. That was fun. That was just good fun to watch.
Yes, I had to think about it for a second. Yes, it was. That's one of those hard ones to think about. Like how would it really turn out? Because it really speaks to the skill and the strength and the intelligence of both the 5s involved.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it also helps that they're fighting against themselves.
Yes.
Where would I go? How would I attack myself?
Which I think is exactly why they're able to keep up with each other with the blinking. They never, ain't nobody's getting away from anyone.
Yeah.
Oh, and number 5 is good. And, I can't, thinking back to another, sort of comic type tradition, there's not really a good analog outside of just him that I know of. I mean, is there anybody that you can think of that, otherwise a similar power set?
Like 5?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know people who've done it with technology, but not with an innate power.
I want to say that I've seen something like that in certain cartoons, like kid cartoons. But it wasn't anything big or as dramatic as how 5 is doing it.
And Mary says he also has the biggest ego in any timeline.
Yeah.
Yes, he does, Mary. Yes, he does.
Where is that on YouTube? Where is that?
Yeah, I've got the stream pulled up so I can watch that.
Oh, okay.
Oh goodness, he definitely has the biggest ego in any timeline. Yeah, here I could. It's a little slower here in the studio, so I can't.
I'll just pull it up. It's no big deal.
There you go. I got it pulled up right there for you.
Nice.
I don't disagree. Oh man, so yeah, no, it's he's got to love the character, love the actor, and he's fun. He's interesting. This new rewind ability that he's developed is going to be so useful.
Oh yeah.
So, I would like to see if he can in some way affect other people around him, though, not necessarily just himself. That would be an interesting evolution of his power set. If we could see him like stop other people or perhaps slow his experience of time, that'd be neat.
Right. Well, I mean, now that he's effectively stepped or rewound time instead of just blinking through it while projecting himself through time. Now that we've seen him start to do manipulations like that, it's like Reggie said at the beginning. It's start with small steps and work yourself to bigger things. Yeah, I think we're going to see some really crazy time manipulation in season 3.
Yes, it's going to be fun. If he doesn't somehow slow his experience of time, I'll be disappointed because I just really expect him to now.
Well, they do need to avoid the trope. There's the Quicksilver scene,
which is exactly what was in my head.
Yep. Yeah, and then Sonic the Hedgehog decided to do that as well. Basically, any time that you have somebody that can move pretty fast, and I mean, time is relative, right? So if you have somebody that can slow down time, then by relativity, they can move pretty fast. They're going to have to avoid the trope. That's going to be very important.
I mean, different cause, but same end result, right?
Exactly.
So that's fair. We do want to see them avoid tropes because we don't want to see this become trite. It needs to stay fresh. It needs to stay unique and be its own thing.
They even did it in The Flash.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to see things, through that slow-mo if you're going that kind of fast. You'd have to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but there's certain things you don't need to do with it. You don't need to have little. I'm just gonna adjust a couple of little things right here, and then I'm gonna walk over here, and I'm gonna turn this can upside down, and then I'm gonna pour water on this person's head, and then I'm gonna smack this person 6 times, and then we're gonna see it all play out in real time.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. That's unnecessary. It was fun the first time it happened. Stop imitating Quicksilver.
You keep it fresh. Keep it fresh.
Keep it fresh.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And once again, I do kind of hope they're listening. So keep it fresh. Don't get in the trope. Solid advice.
Yes.
So moving on to Ben.
Ben. So Ben was a tough one. I mean, from what we know of Ben's abilities, is he can call forth these eldritch tentacles from his stomach and throw people around.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I know I've seen that before. Not necessarily from the stomach, but somebody spawning some eldritch tentacles and then throwing people around. And then I thought of one of my favorite games. It's by Larian Studios. A lot of you probably heard of it. Divinity Original Sin 2. A lot of you probably heard of Larian Studios because they're the ones doing Baldur's Gate 3, and it's because of Divinity Original Sin 2. There is a metamorph build where you basically have the, metamorphosis abilities, and one of the first ones you pick up is the ability to turn your arm into a big eldritch tentacle and just lay the eldritch smackdown,
That we see Ben use so effectively.
Exactly. So that is it. That is what I thought of when I thought of Ben, and what does he relate to?
I'm glad that you thought of something because I drew a blank, but that's perfect.
Well, I'll be honest. My first thought was a druid. Because of it's almost a shape-shifting ability.
Almost ish.
I mean, unless that's actually a portal in his stomach, that would be weird.
So,
We're getting real Lovecraftian up in here. Yeah.
I think they kept the details out for a lot of reasons, one of which may have been they didn't want to explain it, so
yeah,
we're just going to say this is what it is, and that's that, and which is fair. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, number 7, Vanya.
So Vanya was one of the toughest ones, because her ability is called acoustokinesis.
Yes,
that's the technical name for it, if you can get technical for superpowers, but it's called acoustokinesis. And there's not a whole lot out there that has acoustokinesis or photokinesis, or basically taking some sort of energy waves and manipulating them into an extremely destructive offensive force.
Sure.
And I couldn't come up with anything.
Well,
I tried.
I've got 2 from the comics tradition that are similar, but not quite the same. And that's they're both out of Marvel, Banshee and Havoc.
Oh, if we're talking about Marvel, then I would have gone with Susan Storm.
Well, Sue Storm.
It's photokinesis.
Yeah, I mean, which is it's akin to it, but it's not quite the same. Whereas Banshee and Havoc, both of them are well, Banshee in particular is using sound, including the ability to fly and uses it in a very offensive manner. But of course, in his case, though, it's really like a scream as opposed to more of the Sue Storm type, push it out of you kind of deal.
Right. But we don't see I mean, I may be wrong here, but I don't recall seeing the manipulation of the sound waves themselves to do other things besides projecting a force.
We have not seen that out of Vanya. No, doesn't mean
No,
she
Banshee.
can't. Oh, out of Banshee. Yeah, no, he didn't. Yeah, he can't do like the explosions like Vanya can, and creating a field like we saw Lila do. Yeah,
right.
he can't do that. That's why I said it was the closest. So,
okay. Fair. You did say that.
It's I mean, it's not a perfect analog for sure, but it was the closest I could think of.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
But if
Vanya is so unique, and I love how the character was created.
Yes, yeah, the power set is great. I'm a big fan of it. It's the strength and potential that it's got is very cool, and when we see Lila turn around and use it in a defensive manner, and then immediately flip it back in an offensive manner, I mean that was some cool exhibition of just what it can do, and that was that very fun to me.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to see Vanya doing some more of that in season 3.
Yes. Yeah, it would be very cool if she really needed to use that defensively. Because it would mean they're actually going to be threatened by something.
Right. So the bonus. Remember the bonus. I said I've got a bonus for the end.
You did mention that.
Lila is the bonus.
Lila's the bonus.
Lila is the bonus. And I already have an answer.
Do you?
And you may disagree with this.
All right.
Lila is the blue mage.
Okay.
Because in modern day Final Fantasies, so like the to name specifically Final Fantasy 14, which is the MMORPG.
Yeah.
A blue mage is a class that is a caster class, and it's all about learning spells from creatures out there. You go out adventuring, you're killing something, you see that something cast a certain spell, because everything can cast spells in Final Fantasy, right? And as soon as you see that spell cast a certain number of times, then you can cast the spell.
Yes.
A blue mage is the mimic of spellcasting.
There was a character in an older Final Fantasy game, Gao, that it was that's what he did. He had this ability called Rage, and you'd I forget which number it was. It was the one with Kefka.
Okay.
And Gao would jump into the enemies to learn whatever their special abilities were. He'd come back a few fights later, and he's learned whatever it was that the enemies could do.
So he was the original blue mage.
In the Final Fantasy 14 tradition, as far as I know, yes. I don't remember anybody doing something like that before that. And it's the same thing that you had in Final Fantasy 7 with enemy skill materia.
Okay.
You remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Did they bring that back in the remake?
Kind of. Yes, they did. There is still skill materia, and you still have to level it up.
Okay.
It's been forever since I played, and I'm trying not to get my games mixed up because I've, I had to travel through about 20 games to get back to Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy VII remake to remember it.
Fair enough.
You still need to play that, by the way.
I do. I do. I've been busy doing this.
Yeah. What was your excuse last month, though?
I don't know.
Getting ready to be prepared to do this, right?
Right. I was preparing to prepare. All right, man. That's anything else you want to touch on Umbrella Academy?
I think we're good.
All
we're
right,
good for
man.
today. We've been doing it for an hour and 10 minutes, so
yeah. So let me hit you up. There was some interesting news, and I know you haven't been into the show lately. You checked out a little while back, but Doctor Who.
Dr. Woke. What about Doctor Who?
So Doctor Who, I brought up a new background for us.
Yes,
And
barely make out Chris over there.
Yeah, so Chris Eccleston is coming back to do some Big Finish audio productions for Doctor Who. And
he's like the old school radio shows.
Yes, exactly like that. It's Big Finish. They've been doing this for years, even before the new Who rebooted on TV, where they're radio dramas. It's exactly what they are. And actually helped keep the show alive in between the '96 movie and the 2005 reboot.
Fun fact for everybody.
So.
No, really quick. A fun fact for everybody. That's actually the origin of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That whole series started out as a radio drama.
Did it?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought so. So they did the radio drama and then he wrote the book later.
Kind of. They the entire book series was all stories that were pulled from the radio drama that that Douglas Adams actually had to put in order because they weren't in order on the radio. So he had to put them all in order and get them, coherent and then publish them as a book.
I did not know that. I've read the book once. It's been a long time. But I did not know the source material were radio dramas. So.
Oh yeah.
But Eccleston's coming back to the Doctor Who family, and he's going to do a series of radio dramas. And he of course was the Doctor when the show was rebooted in 2005. He stuck around only for series 1, and he's been pretty much divorced from Doctor Who ever since then. And then,
as I recall, there was some sort of big fight or something, and he was only planning on doing the first season anyway.
Yeah, it sort of amounted to him and all of his 3 immediate superiors kind of hated each other.
Oh,
so
that's always that's a really great way to carry on a show.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. Even with the conflict, they did something right because that first series was fantastic.
Oh, it was excellent.
Yeah,
it was excellent. It was the perfect reboot for something like that.
Poor effects and all, it was still great.
Yeah,
I look.
Of course, there's always Billie Piper.
Well, naturally, Billie Piper's
love
wonderful.
Billie Piper.
She's got a great personality, and I think that she's a real woman, right? It's not some kind of ridiculousness. Yeah. She's your typical average woman.
I'm gonna let that one go.
Well, no, I just mean she's not like supermodel thin or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Oh.
She's a typical average woman.
Yeah, yeah. I think she's great looking, but that's just
Not
my
not
opinion.
speaking to whether she's good looking or not. Just she is absolutely. But yeah. I mean, even that first episode, Rose. I mean, the story holds up today, even if the effects don't. I was rewatching it, and I couldn't believe how horrible
Well, I mean, this was what, 15 years ago?
15 years ago.
2005? Let's see, what else was happening in 2005? Wasn't that right around the same time that Star Wars Episode 2 was going on?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. Yeah, we know how much they love their CGI, don't we?
And it didn't hold up the test of time either. I
No,
mean,
it didn't.
one of the things that was good about that, though, is it really bridged the old and the new series. Because one thing the old series was never famous for was super great special effects. Right? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves, right? It was the storytelling, it was the acting. You suspended disbelief for the poor effects. I mean, you did.
Oh,
right?
yeah. And the great costumes.
The great costumes they did do well with the costuming.
Yes.
But so I mean, it's kind of exciting news. But to your point earlier, it does not help the fact that the show is now Dr. Woke. And
Right.
And it's. I mean, I think they've got to cancel it, Val. They got to kill it. We're gonna have to wait 10 years. Somebody can bring it back. Maybe they can convince somebody to do a 60th special. But other than that, this thing needs to rest.
Yes. I don't know about bringing it back because we don't know what society is going to be like in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't see it getting any better. That's dark and it's grim, I know, but that's just my opinion.
Well, let's assume we're still all here and we want to be entertained by shows,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see the agendas getting better, and I don't see the political correctness getting better.
Yeah.
There's no telling what's going to happen in a decade. But as far as this radio drama and the initial question, I think it's got a lot of potential, and I'm very excited to see what comes out of it.
Outstanding.
I've always kind of gone back and forth about how to pronounce his last name. I personally chose Cleston, but I've never heard the guy pronounce it himself. So,
fair enough. I mean, as far as I know, it's Eccleston, but stand prepared to be corrected.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I'm sure I'm wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but
neither would it be for me.
So,
all right. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap for today. But, just want to start by saying thank you for those of you who joined and those of you who are watching on the replay. Val, do you have anything you want to plug before we close?
I do not, but I appreciate the opportunity, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if you've stuck around and watched the stream this long, number one, thank you. Number two, please do like the video if you did, and share it with your friends if you think they might enjoy us chatting back and forth, jawing a little bit about the Umbrella Academy. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. As a new creator here on YouTube, those things and adding comments to the videos are sort of the number one ways that really help me reach a wider audience in order to grow the subscriber base and continue to produce and improve the content that you're watching. Thank you again for your time today. Val, have a good day. Chat, thank you for joining. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you all. Good night.